ninth work study meeting. If we could all rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Director Aspen.
Here.
Director Tierney.
Here.
Director Faulkner.
Here.
Director Hudson. Director Mueller.
Here.
Vice President Byers. President Petrov. Here.
I would like,
Oh, yeah.
may I make a motion, but I'd like to make a motion. It's my understanding that Tiffany's mother is deceased. I'd like everyone to say, I'm going to say it for her, and I apologize if that's inappropriate. Say it for her. I'd also like to ask to excuse her. And Meredith, I would also recommend that we excuse, and I'd like to take the same vote, mainly on the grounds that she has graduations today. So she is still attending a school function, just not ours, and will be there at the exec session.
Yes.
So I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Before we get started, I believe there is an award for Dr. Keenan. So if those of you who are giving it would like to come up to the podium.
Wow, I didn't know this at all. Good evening, President Petrov and members of the board. I would like to introduce President Murray, our M&EA president, and with your permission, he'd like to.
Dr. Keenan, the award that we have for you is the Missouri NEA Horseman Award for the Friend of Education. And, I don't know if you remember, you and I actually kind of got started here at the same time back in.
Yes, and you were at Riverview
in
convocation with me.
2019, and you were ready and I wasn't. And so, but it actually was a great opportunity for us to get together. But the Horseman Awards are given to people who do outstanding work for public education. That this monster that you could work with, a special school district and all the things that you do. Both our SCNEA and our SEEA members were very impressed with the work that you've done with them, and they nominated you for this award, and our board voted unanimously to give you this award. So with no further ado, I'd like to present with you the Horseman Friend of Education. I'll come over here.
Oh, thank you so much.
Try re-looking. Oh, try first. Okay. That's all. Look at Shannon. All right, guys, thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Congratulations. Well deserved.
Before we start, I want to open tonight's meeting with a few comments regarding the board and how we conduct ourselves both as a board and as individuals in our board meetings. I also want to highlight some key provisions from the district school board member code of conduct. As a public body with many constituent groups, students, families, staff, and public in general, we recognize that it's our responsibility to set the tone for the entire district. As board president, I believe it is our responsibility as a board to make every effort to promote a positive image for the district. One of the central tenets of our board member code of conduct is to encourage effective ongoing communication between board board members and other stakeholders. This obligation includes, of course, respectful engagement and tone at all times. During board meetings, and really at all times, board members should communicate professionally and respectfully with each other, district administration, and our entire school community. What does this mean? In my mind, it means that a board member can disagree with someone without being disagreeable. It means that a board member can ask questions without being accusatory. It means a board member can express passion about an issue, but should do so professionally and respectfully. Board members should at all times remain calm when discussing issues, maintain professional tone and volume, and let others finish speaking before speaking, avoid interruptions, and be respectful and polite. We will not always agree, but we can certainly be agreeable in our demeanor. Our board member code of conduct encourages and directs board members to become informed, make decisions based on facts, and improve boardmanship by studying the issues. Central to these concepts is the importance of advanced work and proactive communication. I believe that there should be no surprises at a board meeting. If a school board member has a question or concern, I would ask that you contact me or the superintendent or Amy in advance of a meeting. In this way, individuals will need to respond to the question will have time to consider and prepare a thoughtful and informed response. A board meeting, in my mind, is not the time or place to challenge someone or put someone on the spot. I believe the effective communication requires that discussion at board meetings be limited to the published agenda as required by sunshine law. There should be no supplementation of the agenda unless the superintendent or the school board president determines that it would be detrimental to delay the issue until a subsequent meeting. If the school board member wishes to add an item to the agenda, the member should make the request to the superintendent or the school board president. Our code of conduct requires that board members refrain from divulging confidential information presented during closed session, except when legally required. It may not always be clear when a closed session topic touches on a matter discussed in open session, and if there's any prospect that something a board member intends to say in open session will include confidential matters discussed in closed session, the board member should err on the side of discretion and hold those comments until the next closed session of the board. I also want to clarify the difference between a statement by the board member and a statement or action by the board. As noted in the district board member code of conduct, individual members have no authority to speak or act for the board. While board members are free to speak their minds on any issue, the board speaks through its votes on issues and the actions it takes as a board. For those who attend district board meetings, keep in mind that if you disagree with something an individual board member says or expresses, those statements do not necessarily reflect the perspective of the other board members, and do not reflect the perspective of the entire board. Again, the Special School District Board of Education only speaks or acts when the majority of the board has decided to take action or make a statement as a board. Finally, the board member code of conduct makes it clear that board members are free to express their personal opinions, but once the board has acted, board members should accept the decision of the board. This is the nature of democracy and a deliberative body. Thank you for indulging me this evening, as it is early in my tenure as the board president of the Board of Education. I felt it important to remind the board and the school community about these important matters. Now on to our first business on the agenda. One more thing to read. Sorry. Before we start our monthly SSD Board of Education work study, I would like to take a moment to remind the audience and directors of the board on the work study process. Work study is a time to receive information from the SSD leader. We have 20 minutes set aside for each presentation and 20 minutes set aside for the Board of Education to ask questions. In the event we are approaching the 20-minute marker, I will alert the group and there's 5 minutes left. We ask that at that time the presenter in the allotted time and the board director ask some questions to finalize their questions. This is in respect for the board directors and the SSD leadership at the time. First on the agenda, we have 2.01, the budget presentation for 2024.
Good evening, President Patros, Board of Education, Dr. Keenan. My name is Jeff Hogg, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer. I'm here this evening to talk about the budget presentation. Before I get into that, I would like to take 2 seconds and introduce Deidre Sagerty. She is going to replace me, and she's right back here. Yesterday, I had an absolute great day with the staff in the department. So the transition is going to be great. All right. So on the first slide here, we'll talk about the purpose and the budget goals. We've talked about the budget goals as we've gone through the first one being equity, second one staffing, the third curricular support, and the fourth is facilities. And as we have talked about this year, we've talked about zero-based budgeting with the needs, the wants, and the enhancements. We've talked about budgeting through tiered lenses of all our partner districts and our SSD schools, our disproportionality districts, and then our high-end districts as well. Revenue by source, as you take a look at this slide, you'll see in the left-hand column what the budget FY21 was and the actual FY21 that's next to that. So you'll see that we budgeted $480 million in FY21 and actually received $474. That varies on tax rate, it varies on state money, it varies on the collection rate as well. And then you'll see in FY22, we budgeted $483 million in revenue and received $491. That was through an increase in assessed valuation, and it was an increase through some other revenue items such as Medicaid. Then you'll see that we have an adjusted budget for FY23. We're looking at $533 million in revenue for this year. And then you'll see to the far right, a budget for FY24. We're showing an increase in local, and that is due to next year's reassessment year. So we'll see an increase in assessed valuation. We'll also see an increase in investments, but for local, we'll see a little bit in Prop C. And then you'll see that our county, which is fines and forfeitures, will remain the same. Our state will increase a little bit as we look at the foundation formula for the attendance, and then transportation as well. And then our federal will remain a little bit flat, a slight increase there. And then contracting and others at some tuition we received for a total of $550 million in revenue. And then you'll see on the expenditure side, we break that down by certified salary, non-certified salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, and capital outlay. And so you'll see that budget FY21, we budgeted $496 and spent $459 billion. That was coming off the COVID years where we weren't spending as much on supplies, where we weren't spending as much on salary. We still had some vacancies there. And then purchase services as well. So you see a little bit of a dip there. And then for FY22, we budgeted 503, spent 490. We're looking at FY23 at 524. And then for next year, we're budgeting $588 million. That includes the negotiated or estimated negotiated rates. So that includes the raises we were able to give, and that includes the other benefits as well. And so when you take those two and you see 588 and 550, we're projecting to deficit spend by $38 million next year. When you do that, we can look at what we spend. So about $5 million to $6 million is roughly 1%. We have a strong fund balance. We know that we have a plan to spend that down as we go through with this. And so we will deficit spend next year, and you can see that on the screen. So in February, we brought staffing requests so that we can get a head start on hiring. There's a couple here that we'll bring forward on the 23rd for approval, and that's positions that have come from the board or requests that we know we're going to need as we move forward. So one being the DEIA director, we're going to have a part-time teacher at Lindbergh, part-time teacher at Kirkwood, and then maybe accounted for through some other movement. But really right now we have a split teacher, and we want to make each one of us a full-time teacher for each school. And then we have a hometown teacher, and you see the asterisk. We'll replace that with a VSP teacher. We just wanted to make sure you were well aware of the change. So what we're looking for, currently at this point, having 31 staff for approximately $2.4 million. That does not include benefits. And that'll be about another $750,000 to $1 million on top of that. What we're looking for in the total reduction of unfilled vacancies is, at this point, 200 vacant spots. So no one would lose a job, no one would lose a position. We're identifying vacancies that we currently have that we can take off the books. That's to the tune of about $9 million in salary and another $3 million in benefits. And so again, those are unfilled vacancies that we've identified right now. No one would lose a job with those reductions. That leads me to my last slide. I would be more than happy to answer any questions at this point.
John, I have a question for you. Well, really not a question, just a comment. Thank you for serving for SSD. You only have one more meeting, don't you?
I think two.
When do you leave?
Well, last day of June, so June 20th, June 30th.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, that was in the comments. Thank you for your service to the school district.
I really appreciate it. You
Repeat it again.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, 2.02, is the program monitoring. Monitoring.
Molly Bolton report. Whatever. Good evening, President Patra, Board of Education, Dr. Keenan. My name is Molly Bolton, and I am the Executive Director of Teaching, Learning, and Accountability. With me this evening, I have Dr. Matt Traver, who is the Evaluation and Research Administrator. And tonight, we are going to talk to you about the NSTEP reporting report, monitoring report. So just to remind you of the purpose of this report, this fulfills the DESE NSTEP requirement for program evaluation and monitoring. And as you know, we have divided those programs up into sections, so you kind of get a chunk at a time throughout the year, 3 times a year. So this is our third and final presentation for this year. These reports help to inform you guys of how our programs are doing, and in the spirit of continuous improvement, allow us to continue to make improvements to the program. This evening, we will talk about community and adult education, employee wellness, legal services and compliance, library media, professional school counseling, and the safety and security response program. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Matt Traver.
Thanks, Molly. Good evening. So this next slide is, you've seen it before, it's just an overview of the information that is in the summary tables of these reports. So it includes a list of the indicators that are used to evaluate the programs, along with the targets that we're hoping to meet. Data showing the results of the program that is color-coded to indicate whether the goal is met, and an arrow to indicate the direction of the trend. And then there's some supporting details that are provided that help explain the indicators and provide any additional context that might be helpful in interpreting the results. So the first program we're going to talk about tonight is community and adult education. So my colleague Carla Reichert worked with Dennis Mix, the Director of Adult Education, to compile this report. So it includes 3 unique metrics. So the first-time pass rate on the certification exam of students, the completion rates for students in that program, as well as the job placement rate. Just a few notes about this one is that for that first indicator, the 90% target actually exceeds the state expectation, which is 8%, so we set a more ambitious target for ourselves. The student completion rate did dip during COVID when instruction was provided virtually, so that's hopefully starting to climb back up. And some of the action plans that were developed and included in this report are designed to study our course offerings and hopefully create some improvements in instruction and assessment that will aid in increasing that student completion rate. The job placement rate is obviously, as you can see, it's as high as it can get, as 100%, at 100% the last few years. That's based on graduates that we are in contact, and that is actually a very high number. It tends to be above 80%. Employee wellness is the next program. So this is another one that Carla Reichert worked on with our Director of Benefits and Risk Management, Brenda Dooley Artis. So there are 3 indicators used to monitor this program. One is just an overall rate of participation in wellness programming. A second is the extent to which our staff utilize the EAP program. And then a third is based on a survey item that's part of our engagement/climate surveys, asking about the extent to which employees perceive that we're offering strong programming. So, the EAP is our employee assistance program. So, and regarding that one, SSD our staff tends to utilize those services at a much higher rate than occurs in the education sector. In some recent years, it's been almost as much as double the industry rate. The third program is legal services and compliance. So I work closely with our administrators in our legal services and compliance office on the development of this report. So the first three indicators you could conceptually group together. These are all data related to some grievances, if you will, or complaints that we receive from families in the form of due process filings, child complaints, and also requests for mediations. So the hope there is that results and findings coming out of those hearings show that SSD actually is in compliance or is providing adequate services to a large degree. The fourth metric there pertains to what is commonly referred to as file review or tiered monitoring, where districts complete a self-study of IEP compliance that is followed up by a DESE review of IEPs that were reviewed by district staff. So each district in the state of Missouri undergoes a review like this once every 3 years. All districts are divided up into 3 cohorts, so it's spread across the 3-year period. The final 2 metrics there pertain to the extent to which our key IEP processes that are associated with certain timelines are completed within those timelines. So for both annual IEPs as well as initial evaluations, those have been being completed within the expected timeline at an increasing rate each of the last few years. So that's good to see. Library Media Centers is a program that is overseen by Matt Glazer, who is our curriculum coordinator. So I worked with him as well as our library media specialists on this report. So it has 4 distinct indicators, including circulation of materials, the extent to which students access the library and offerings of our libraries, classroom lessons, how often or at what frequency those are provided to students, as well as surveys of stakeholder satisfaction with our library media program. So our library folks, we work to further operationalize their indicators this year and set some more concrete targets, and the results all look very positive. They're all exceeding the targets that we've set. Professional school counseling is another program that is overseen by Matt Glazer, so we got input from our school counselors on development of this one. The first key indicator, that IIR that you see, refers to internal improvement review. This is a detailed self-evaluation of the extent to which our school counseling program is being implemented as required by the state. So that target has been met in each of the last 3 years, and I believe we are going to increase the target moving forward and set a more ambitious one that aligns with what the state perceives as a fully implemented program. The second indicator there is called the ICAP, or the Individual Career and Academic Plan. As of 2021-22, this is actually an indicator in MSIP 6, so it's a state requirement. It contributes to our accreditation points, if you will. So that one did fall a little bit below the 100% target this year. We began a new process for logging those data into our student information system last year, and I think there were just a few hiccups. We've already put some things in place to correct that and improve those processes. Another issue is that we are required to develop ICAPs for all students regardless of their duration of stay. So we have some programs where students may be enrolled for a very short period of time, like just a couple of days, for example, in our courts program. And sometimes it's difficult to develop an ICAP in that short period of time. So finally, safety and security response. I developed this report in close cooperation with our Director of Safety and Security, John Miller, as well as our Safety and Security Coordinator, Eric Ely. So this report includes 4 distinct indicators. The latter 2 of those are newly added to the report. So there are some new ways that have been identified to evaluate the extent to which this program is being implemented well. So the safety audit is the first one. So twice per year, our safety department conducts audits with our SSD school buildings and several other SSD buildings, including the Learning Center and Central Office. The extent to which these, what they call critical life safety exceptions have been identified has decreased significantly here. So that's been attributed to better coordination between our safety departments and our facilities departments, as well as our safety department doing a better job leveraging some of our data systems and our work management systems to communicate around correcting those exceptions. So work injury is a second indicator. These are non-student related work injuries, or you could refer to them as injuries that would likely be due to environmental conditions in the buildings. So these are also on pace to decrease this year. The third indicator there pertains to our security cameras. So at this point in the district, we have over 650 networked security cameras. And on any given day, 98.1% of those are functional. So to put that in context, when baseline was taken on this approximately 3 years ago, we were at 79%. So we're doing a much better job ensuring all those security cameras are functioning. So finally, emergency preparedness is an indicator. This is the extent to which schools and other buildings are completing emergency drills. That result this year did fall below the target, although another case where we implemented a new system for reporting completion of emergency drills have already implemented some process improvements there. So looking ahead in the future, we expect that result will be at 100% or near 100%. Questions could I answer at this time?
I'm curious, on this page number 9, the work injury numbers, we lowered to 29, where they have been a few years prior up to 150. You attribute that to, and who do we give credit to?
Yeah, so the 29 is through December of this year. So, you know, if it stays on that pace, you might project that at year end it would be 60. So it wouldn't be low. In 2020 and 21, those low numbers are partly attributed to the fact that much of our instruction was virtual. So there was fewer opportunities for staff to engage in work injury. I mean, the theory of change there would be that if we are, through those safety audits, doing a better job of identifying conditions that could result in injury, the hope is, I think, that if those are going down, it might result in fewer opportunities for injury and fewer injuries overall. Beyond that, I'm not sure what a kind of a theory or hypothesis for why that decrease would be. I do know that, you know, we have a work injury committee that is always taking a look at our data and thinking of ways that they could reduce our injuries overall.
Can I tag on to your question? It was an excellent question. Would it be possible to put an asterisk on those figures, especially with during the COVID? Because what's going to happen is 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, people aren't going to remember what COVID, what it did. And so if we had an asterisk there, it might be helpful to explain why the data was there.
We try to note that in the supporting details, which aren't necessarily on these slides, but we'll
just somebody, I think, I find people have short memories.
I had a few questions. Are we able to pull up the actual supplemental report that you provided to us?
Those were provided in board docs. We didn't print those.
We're not, okay, so I have a, so for the other board, so you can still be able to see this, but this is for the one, sorry, bear with me. This is for the compliance monitoring.
Okay.
And the question about this was about the supplemental data regarding the different districts, the 2021 to 22 school year. And there was a very large discrepancy between some of the different school districts. And what I'm hoping to hear, and again, this could be provided later day, are some specific comments on those discrepancies and what we're doing to work to improve those, because that was some very impressive discrepancies between school districts that come out were 97% compliance. And then the least compliant school districts was for 4. They were 72% off. It's a very large difference, and to me speaks again to our move towards equity.
So we can provide that to you in your Friday packet. You have the details.
Thank you. And next question regarding the this will be an easier question regarding the security cameras. I assume the dates when that was audited were random dates as opposed to one where folks were informed ahead of time. Hey, we're coming in on these 3 dates this year to make sure the cameras are on.
Yeah, our safety coordinator audits those on a regular schedule. I believe it's every week or every other week. So we just took 3 points in time.
Just 3 random ones. Okay, got it.
Okay. The average, but moving forward, what we're going to do is just so it will be an average across all locations of those audits.
Thank you. The next question was with regards to the employee wellness reports. This is off topic to your presentation, but and again, this may be missing something or forgetting, but there was a comment that the climate survey was not done last year. Is that right? Was there no climate survey last year?
2020.
Well, since it for both 2020, school year 2020 to 21 and 21 to 22.
So one issue is that before this year, we had both a climate survey and an engagement survey. So this particular question about employee wellness was on the climate survey, but not the engagement survey. So some years, I think in 2021-22, we did have an engagement survey, but that question was not complete.
Thank you.
I have some questions too. One being, the first being, do you know why it went down in, for the, page 4, for the nursing, why it went down? We had such a great last year, and then this year was only 81%.
The first time passing.
So for the first time pass rate of the certification exam?
Yeah. Why, do you know why it went down by 10%?
I'm not sure, but we could follow up with our director of adult education and get an answer to that for you.
That'd be great. We need our nurses. Their job, so you can put on ladies.
Kevin's time went out.
Sorry, I think I just know the answer. So the difference is the NCLEX, which is the assessment that our LPN registered or LPN nurses have to take, has changed in format. And they've added a bank of questions which are more situational assessments. It's the first year that was a part of the NCLEX assessment. It was a change that happened nationally. And so if you looked across the board in the state of Missouri for LPN programs, it was a struggle across the board. You even have some LPN programs that ended up lengthening the time of their program to give more time to prepare for that new type of question that hadn't existed on the exam before. So it was more of a level setting year because we were really trying to figure out what's the best way to prepare students for, they're called critical judgment questions is what they are, which is really more what you'd see at the end of like a bachelor's degree in nursing program is really what you'd be prepared for, but now that's being pushed all the way down to the LPN assessment. And so it was a shift. And so to prepare students for it, we were doing our best, but this was getting our baseline data to then figure out, okay, how do we better prepare those students for a year after that?
so now we're
Yep.
much more prepared for next year.
Now we know what we're getting ourselves into, and we have a better idea of these strategies worked, those strategies didn't. Because if you looked at second time pass rate, we had a number of students who did not pass the first time, but they did pass the second time. But what the State Board of Nursing looks at is solely first time board pass rate.
My next question was, what, for the employee wellness, what does a wellness activity look like? What's a wellness activity? They're talking about certification.
So our, wellness program coordinates a variety of programming, so it could be things like fitness classes in person. They make available, other applications, that have fitness classes on them, or some meditation apps and things like that our staff can use. They offer seminars of a variety of topics related to wellness. They also coordinate the annual health fair. So within that health fair, staff have opportunities to get health screenings like blood testing and mammograms and things like that. So that all contributes to that number.
So it would be also a wellness activity.
Yeah.
Okay. And, for the library media centers, was it just our schools, or was it just? No. Okay. County loves library, high five, so looking at you want a librarian. That's his favorite place to be. And anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Next up in 2.03 is the strategic plan and comprehensive school improvement plan, the third quarter update.
Me, President Claptrap, Board of Education, Dr. Keenan. My name is Molly Bolson, and I'm the Executive Director of Teaching, Learning, and Accountability. And tonight, I'm here to give you the third quarter updates on both the strategic and the CSIP, or comprehensive school improvement plan. So, just a quick reminder, this is third quarter, our first third quarter of our 5-year plan. So we're not even a year into this plan yet, so just want you to keep that in mind. This next slide is very familiar to you, but then again, just a reminder of the difference between our strategic plan and our comprehensive school improvement plan. So we'll start with our strategic plan progress update. So our first goal is those strategic database systems to really support our instructional as well as our operations. With this, we have a couple big things going. As I stated before, we're still working with MoreNet on a grant to look at a system where we can do data sharing across districts. And then we're also looking at some data governance. And then continuing to work on our key performance indicator dashboard, which we are hoping to bring to you in the fall. So we will have a year's worth of data in our dashboard, and so that should be helpful for the visualization, for you guys to learn a little bit more about that. So kind of what next steps are is we will be bringing some suggestions for our data governance strategy to the district leadership team for feedback, and that will happen later this month. And then we are continuing to work through our action plan and working with MoreNet and their provider, which is evaluating. For goal 2, we're looking at resources to support our students. So that very first one, you'll remember that that was completed after second quarter this year, where we collected the data of the resources being used by departments. And that has been passed on to our strategy 2.2, which is really working on the making sure we're effectively and efficiently distributing those resources. And so that is a brand new team, remember, this year. So they're really working through getting started and integrating some of the data in order then to make it actionable and work through that theory of change. Our goal 3 is about communication and ensuring that we have that two-way communication across all our stakeholder groups. So 3.1 is really thinking about our businesses, our agencies, and our community stakeholders. And so right now, they are working through reviewing their action plans from the survey data that we had this fall, as well as our family and community data that we finished up in January, and working through action plans on that. And then they're also researching how other organizations are keeping track of different partnerships, so we can ensure we have a good process. Being such a large district with so many different outreach efforts, oftentimes we may be partnering in one part of the district and in another part of the district, and we don't know that we have both of those partnerships going. So really kind of streamlining those partnerships and being aware of who we have those partnerships with. For our engaging the families, 3.2, we did report out on that at our last board meeting, you might remember, through our FACE update. But basically working through that family engagement quality indicators checklist that was shared with you last time, and the feedback that just became available in April with that, and then action planning from that. And then also, as I stated before, that stakeholder survey from our families that we received in January, working through next steps and action plans on that. Our last strategy in this goal is the communication systems amongst departments, so making sure we have internal communication systems. So really working on developing a subcommittee to take some field trips so that we can see different parts of the district and kind of break down some of those silos and understand working conditions and what happens in some of the other areas around the district. Also, working on the Connection Staff newsletter, looking at the visibility of that, how many views it has, incorporating different activities in there so that staff can utilize that newsletter. And then also looking at doing some potential video updates from DLT members. Next, we'll move on to our CSIP plan update. For CSIP 1.1, that is our transition and positive post-secondary outcomes. Upon the recommendation from the board at our last update, we did get feedback on the post-secondary outcomes and defining what a positive post-secondary outcome is as defined by SSD. They have gathered some of the post-secondary data. It's really sometimes a challenge to get that from our partner districts. So that's a pretty big process, but they have gotten that data and they're beginning to analyze that data now. Also looking at what kind of measurements we can do around family satisfaction with post-secondary outcomes. We know many of our families they appreciate post-secondary outcomes that we may not always think are as successful according to DESI's standards. But for our families and for our students, they might be considered very successful. Really wanting some of that family feedback of how do we do? Is your child performing where you perform after they graduate? 1.2 is really looking at the connections between student data and the research. And so again, they're looking at some of those research-based factors that then they can integrate into the system. If you remember when we did our CSIP plan, we talked about some of those external factors such as student mobility. We also talked about, different outside factors, healthcare, those kinds of things that might not be within our realm, but definitely impact our students. So really thinking about how to integrate some of those pieces in. And then the last strategy in goal 1 is collaborative planning with our partners. So bringing in some of the secondary members. So we have the members who meet at least monthly to do the work, but then we have the secondary members that we bring in to keep apprised of the work and to provide feedback. So working on bringing in those secondary members in the planning process. And then also they've done a data review, so starting to plan around that data review. For goal 2, we are looking at aligning and coordinating decision-making to make sure we have those student supports available. And so the 2.1 is really looking at the philosophy that we have around special education and special education delivery. And so as you might remember from quarter 2, they were developing some tools to really gather information on the types of programs that are specific for our partner districts and within our schools. And so now their next steps are to take those tools and actually go to each of the directors' district meetings through spring and summer and to work through those tools, capturing that data of the types of programs they have to support our students. 2.2 is looking at those evidence-based practices. So you might remember from quarter 2, we were working on kind of gathering all those great tools that we have out there for teachers and staff and making decisions for students, and then determining where those are available and also when a teacher might be introduced to those. And so now our next steps are really identifying, can some of these tools be combined or streamlined so that we don't have as many tools, so it's not quite as overwhelming for our staff and they can be really used effectively. And then also the second part of that strategy is working through a core program resource guide for our partner districts to look at some of those programs that have components that we know to be evidence-based for students with special needs. Goal 3 is really looking at the students that have high mobility. And so again, reaching out to those partner districts to gather some information about the data and how we can get the data on students that are highly mobile. So right now they're building out a prototype to really look at that data and prioritize some of those data components to then develop an action plan. And that is the update. What questions do you have?
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
As the 5 years move on, because every plan only has like 1 to 3 strategy points, will there be more strategy points on it?
So these are very broad strategies. So within that broad strategy, we have action plans. So the action plans will be updated annually, and when we do fourth quarter reports, I'll be bringing you some of that information.
Okay.
But the strategies pretty much stay pretty consistent. That they were written broadly enough to cover 5 years.
Thank you for the report, I appreciate it. My question is regarding the strategies and the accomplishments that we are listing. Being that we have a shortage in certain communities of employees, how are we gathering that data if we in fact have fewer people in those particular schools?
Yeah, so a lot of that is, like I said, for example, the philosophy one where they're looking at programming. So we, Dr. Grigsby and her committee are actually going out and gathering that information from those administrators.
So it's a philosophy at this point and not something that we've actually accomplished. It's a philosophy.
Well, what we're trying to do is look at all the different program offerings we have across the county, which vary greatly, and come up with a common philosophy that we can then move forward as a district. That's the 5-year plan, is to come up with that. Right now, remember, we're just about 6-7 months in, so right now they're gathering the information of what are those different programs available across the county so that that can help inform us for that work moving forward.
So it's evident that it's a must that we in turn fill those vacancies first before we can actually ascertain the strategy and its accomplishment.
I think with the philosophy piece and with looking at the programs that are there, I'm not sure our programming would greatly change when you look at, for example, having rooms that are self-contained versus resource versus co-teaching. We have those in a variety of settings, even in districts that may have vacancies.
So you're saying filling those vacancies wouldn't make a definite change?
I don't think it would make a change in terms of those services we are offering. I think it will make a huge change in the quality of service we're providing our students.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lastly on agenda, 2.04, board policy recommendations for presentation.
Good evening, President Hoff, Dr. Keenan, Chief People and Culture Officer, and I want to present to you an overview of some policy recommendations for the board. First policy recommendation is a paid time observation policy meant to help staff members who are facing a critical medical need, and also are out of PTO days. It would be an anonymous donation in order for us to be in compliance with IRS rules, and we would be looking at creating a process where people could access up to 15 days prior to certain eligibility around being a donor yourself into the PTO bank, and we're hoping that what this does is provide some needed support for our staff members. Another policy is proposed policy change to GBO, which would increase access to our tuition reimbursement funds. This is for the purpose of making sure that we continue to invest in the educational growth of our employees. Current funding request for next year at $500,000, and I believe that we'll have additional discussions about how that may increase over the years. Another proposed change is for GCBDA and GDBDA, which are professional and short-term leaves. One of the changes we're proposing is an increase in the PTO payback from 80 to 150 that would include payouts for retirement and for death. Bereavement leave expansion would go from 3 to 5 days, and it would expand the family members that would be part of the currently identified members that would qualify under bereavement leave. We would also include an offering that employees that experience miscarriage could also take advantage of bereavement leave. We would also like to discuss the critical leave offering for 5 days annual leave with catastrophic loss, property, home, critical injury that would require emergency treatment for a self-qualified family member, paid parental leave, which would provide 40 consecutive days of leave not chargeable against other accrued leave, which run concurrently with FMLA. Answer any questions.
Well, it's my understanding this was presented on April 28th to the board policy committee.
Yes, sir.
At that point, if I remember right, please somebody correct me, I had two other members of the policy board with me, that we had recommended at that time because we did not have a financial impact statement, that we received that. This is the first time I've seen it. Never sent it before today.
In terms of the financial information, we had included that in the presentation.
Right, we had asked for this April 28th.
I apologize for any delays on that.
Next question I just found out today when we talked to MSBA on this, that this is being negotiated in the JR now.
It is.
My understanding, this is what I was told from MSBA, so I'm not telling you it's true, it's just what I was told today, that if in fact it's in the JR, we no longer make, if there is a discrepancy between policy and what's in the JR takes precedence, is that correct?
That would be correct.
So why did we show this to the policy committee first?
The reason this was brought to the policy committee in part is because the person not covered by the JR would not have potential access to these policies.
But it wouldn't have mattered to the JR, but the JR is being negotiated now, right?
That is correct.
These are elements that are in the JR.
That's correct.
I have a few questions. Again, some of this is and respectfully, I do recall you made a request that we talk about the budget, but I wasn't under the impression we didn't be talking about that today. So I did think that was where we would get these numbers. I had questions on all three items. First of all, on GBBDF, paid time off donation policy. When we talked about this in our policy meeting, it was brought to that there was a similar policy in the past. And my request was on that policy meeting that we have some summary of, again, within what we can discuss in an open meeting, what went wrong with the previous policy meeting, the previous policy and why it was removed or ended, and then what was being done to address any issues that came up with this new policy. Do you have anything?
Okay, so we've been trying to research that. I have not been able to find the documentation around the changes for that or any reports on any potential issues that had occurred before. And I'm unclear as to whether the setup was the same as what is being proposed for this.
Do you remember roughly what time period this
It was
was?
about 2001, 2002. What was happening at that time, there was a problem with it. An individual had gotten sick. There was supposedly, I'm not saying it happened, there was pressure being put on people to donate at that time. And that caused some strife within the staff. And there was a blow up at a board meeting. Dr. Kakis was the superintendent at that time. He had moved to get rid of that at that time. I would talked about it in the board, you're absolutely right, Dr. President. We had said, this is a great idea. It didn't work before. Can we find out why? So if there were problems, so we would fix it this time.
I can talk to you about an experience in a prior district where donations were not anonymous. Similar problems were, I would say, emerged when you had actual advocacy. That ends up creating a lot of conflict. The recommendation from both council and from the IRS is that's one of the reasons why you want an anonymous donation.
I mean, this is a great idea, and it's a good idea for people. My thing on this is, I never like to reinvent the wheel. Something went wrong before I let's see it. Could there be a way that you would talk to people who were here in 2002, 2003? This was the case and why it went away. Because I think it's a great idea, and I think this one's well worth it. But this has to go through a board, because we're going to have to discuss the JR, yes.
And I think too that it seems like the evolution of this policy probably has come along since 2001, 2002, and I think that a lot of companies have started to do this in other districts. So trying to still investigate that piece, we'll do that, and then also investigate what other districts are using.
Which brings me to one. Is there a possibility, I mean, I'd like to be able to discuss, say, a closed session, the JR at length, because I would like to see any and all language changes. That hasn't been done yet. I just was, I did not know this was in the JR. That one shocked me today. Because not that they're bad ideas, it's just, I didn't know that it was there. Didn't know it was a $4.55 million estimate. Ideas are great. This is discussion. Also brings me is if it's a discussion, it's still under negotiation. I'm really kind of curious. Why is this not a closed session?
I think because of the policy, as a policy, the policies themselves, as they apply to miscellaneous business professionals and administrators not covered by JR, would not necessarily be covered.
But it is currently being discussed in the current JR, is that correct?
That's correct.
The other question, I think you may have an answer, but this is for GCBDA, GBDA, professional support shortly. And I'd asked, it was just a comment at the last policy meeting about 40 days post-childbirth or adoption, and there was language in that policy stating that if both parents were employees of the school district, that they would not be able to take that leave concurrently. I expressed a concern about whether I hope they can take it concurrently because.
My apologies, Dr. Andrew. What I articulately meant was that they could not have basically double length of time as a household they would share that 8 weeks. So if they both were taking time, that would basically count as double. So if like that first 2 weeks after the birth of the baby, that would count as 4 weeks chargeable against that household. But they could definitely still take time together.
I have a question about the math. So if I don't take a PTO time and 2PQ does, it's the same 8-hour day that's being paid, why would it impact the budget whether I use it or you?
Part of the calculation costs were around still needing subs as well, because we still would, for many of our positions, we would need subs.
Okay. That makes sense. I couldn't understand from the PTO part, but that makes sense. And then, I just want to say, I very much like that it includes miscarriage, because that needs to be done. And full parent parental leave. Any other questions? You got it, sir? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against?